sympathy if you got soul. You don't need sympathy if you got soul.
Welcome to Adapt of Chicago Productions. I'm your host, Barb Wesselek. We've been having protests at the Thompson Center regarding the Illinois state budget. Also included in the footage that we want to show you is some street theater. And then when we return, I will be discussing some questions with Tom Wilson regarding the state budget cuts.
What do we want?
Community service.
When do we want them?
Now.
What do we want?
Community service.
When do we want them?
Now.
What do we want?
Community service.
When do we want them?
Now.
I'm Rachel Seiler. I am here on behalf of Chicago Adapt and also Access Living, and I am here today at the rally to fight against the budget cuts. As a person with a disability, I do use home services, and every hour that is given to me is needed in order for me to get to work every day and go to bed every night, to help me cook my food, to help me go to the bathroom. And even if it's a little bit cut off, it's still my freedom and my independence, and I don't belong anywhere else but in my home.
I'm the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois decided that Jennifer is no longer eligible for home services. I think we're just going to have to let her lay there. Yeah, I don't think she deserves to go to work. I don't think she deserves to have to get up and take care of her kids. Her kids can do fine by themselves. What do you think?
Illinois, that's ridiculous.
What do you mean, no? We're out of money. We don't have any money to pay personal attention.
Shame on you, state of Illinois!
Come on.
Okay. So, what do you think the state of Illinois should do?
Come on.
As we approach the 20th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, this budget rolls back civil rights. We need to keep programs that work and slash those that don't. How many people here work for a disability service provider? Okay? And how many of your organizations does the state of Illinois owe money? Do they owe money to your organization? They owe money to mine! Okay?
We're one of the lowest funded community service systems in the country, and now we're talking about devastating cuts. Taking the safety net, which was never very strong, and cutting a big hole in it, and letting everyone just sort of slip out and flop to the ground like our friend here did earlier, and not having the resources and supports to get back up. It's going to be more people out of work, more people in institutions, more people staying in institutions who are ready to come back and live with the rest of us. It is going to be horrific. And we've got to say no now.
A mental illness is not a person's fault. Nobody has to be bipolar, schizophrenic, or suffer from severe depression, but we all have the right to make ourselves better by receiving the treatment we need.
Yes, we do.
We need our services back. We need consumers, family members, friends, and anyone else we can get to call the governor, Dr. Jones, and Annette Larson, who made these decisions, and let them know that these services help, and we need them to stay well.
How are people going to live their lives and be a part of the community if our budgets are cut? We can't let this happen. Our assistive technology system is going to be cut. People with disabilities and wheelchairs won't be able to get their wheelchairs fixed. They won't be able to be seated for the right proper wheelchair. They're going to develop sores on their bodies and have to be put in hospitals. We don't want that, do we? No! So, I think it's time for us to put up our voices really loud. We need to have the governor's office up there in that building hear us. Ready? No! No more budget cuts! No more budget cuts! No more budget cuts! No more budget cuts!
Well, I'm from the governor's office, And I am... Don't yell at me, I'm just a lackey sent here to deliver a message. He didn't think you people were important enough to come down here and see himself, so he sent me instead. And I really don't want to be here because it's a little hot outside and I like my air-conditioned office. So this is a letter from the governor. I hope you enjoy it. You folks are just going to have to suck it up. The rich don't want to pay more taxes. Legislators, we're victims in this. The governor is the victim in this. Legislators have dumped the problem on us, but we have a solution. The governor's office has a solution, and it's worked before. It'll work again.
Close down all nursing homes then.
We're going to cut your services.
I'm a nursing home owner. I didn't have any cuts at all. I might get some new residents and make some more money, oh boy, as they cut those community services.
We're doing everything we can to address these issues in a terrible time from an economic standpoint in the recession that we're in, and also from a budgetary time where we're facing a $13 billion deficit. And Governor Quinn has been at the forefront of telling the people of Illinois and the General Assembly and the legislators we need more revenue. And he has said that, and he's been clear at his own political peril. He has been out there saying that. And we will continue to have that fight to get more revenue because we have to have these services. Last year, Governor Quinn stood up to the General Assembly. He vetoed the budget. And the fight continues and has to continue to get more revenue, to build capacity so that we can have all the community services that we need for people with disabilities, for the aged, etc. So we'll take this letter up, we will give it to the governor, and we will work to make sure that we have a meeting to address these issues with the governor. And thank you all for coming out today, and thank you for letting your voices be heard.
We are doing the absolute best we can, but you've got to let your legislators know as well. Make sure from whatever district you're in that they know they know you, they know how important these programs are, so that they'll take seriously these issues when they decide, as they will again and again, how to vote for revenue for the state of Illinois. So I'll stay with what Jack said, and we're working just as hard as we can on many of these same issues you're equally concerned about.
You heard the governor's staff. They said they can't guarantee that these cuts are going away. They still don't have an answer to make sure that we have the services that we need in the community. So what do we want? Save our services! Save our services! Save our services! Save our services!
Save our services! Save our services! Save our services!
Remember your humanity. Remember that you're a person and you deserve the services you receive. You deserve to get to go to the doctor. You deserve to have housing. You deserve to have an education. Yes. So stand up for yourself. Yes. Stand up for all of us, and let's get out there. Yes. Let's stop these cuts. Yes.
Stop the cuts!
Stop the cuts. Stop the cuts.
Stop the cuts! 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 Stop the cuts!
Oh God, that's I don't know what I can't put it in one word, Tom, but it's not good. It's not good at all. I wanted to start out by asking you, what is the status of the Illinois budget cuts?
Yes, as people may know, the Illinois is having a huge financial crisis. It's part of our whole national economic crisis. But Illinois began to have unbalanced budgets about 10 or 15 years ago. And because of that, we're now in like about a $12 billion hole. And so that has made Illinois' situation even more severe than many other states. So we're seeing that the Illinois legislature has been starting to cut into programs, and that has included health care, education, and social services. And most deeply, I think, into social services and health care. And these are programs that affect people with disabilities directly. So we're seeing that these budget cuts are starting to hurt people.
And who has been affected so far by these cuts?
Well, as you would guess, the education cuts have meant teacher layoffs, so there's more unemployment, which is really a bad thing to do when the economy is so bad to start with. Students are having bigger class sizes. We've seen that some of the supports for students with disabilities have been cut. We also know that people with psychiatric disabilities have lost a lot of their hours of counseling, and many people have told me that they almost never get to see their psychiatrist. So we don't know if their medications are being well balanced or whatever, and so that it means that they're in danger of being institutionalized if they don't get the supports that they need. We also know that the state is planning to cut home service hours for seniors and for younger people with disabilities. This means that the quality of life suffers, that they don't get as taken care of nearly as well as they were, and we weren't spending enough money before, really. You know, we've seen social workers laid off. I was at an agency speaking just a couple weeks ago, and they had several of their programs and staff dropped because of no money, funding from the state, usually, of course. And so we see all these different cuts are hitting people very hard.
And that goes for the PAs. I mean, they get their hours cut. That's a part of their income that they're losing.
Well, exactly right. The cuts in hours for people with disabilities are approximately 8% of the total hours. And some people can't afford to lose any hours. They need everyone that they're getting. So we know that that's going to be detrimental. We hope that it doesn't mean a lot of people going into institutions or nursing homes, which would be a little bit of that foolishness in that, if they fund the home services, they can keep people out of the institutions, which cost 3 times as much.
Right. So why are we having such a crisis in Illinois?
Some of it in Illinois is just a very bad political environment. We've had, a lot of corruption. We've had people failure to take responsibility for the budget. And Blagojevich, for example, would promise people things, but then he wouldn't come up with a way to pay for them. And then they would rig the books and borrow against the future and shift money around. And so, even before the recession, we were in a big financial mess. And now the revenues from taxes are way down. Sales taxes are not what they were. And the value of homes are falling. And so even some of the property taxes are being adjusted. So what we see is that Illinois is a state that has a structural budget deficit. That means that given the situation, even if the economy were to bounce back, we would not be taking in enough money to pay our bills. And some politicians have said that we can cut our way out of this crisis. The cuts are already hurting people. To make up that $12 billion, there would be blood in the streets. I don't know how they think that they can cut their way out of these crisis. So, it's important that we see that there was bad management. We also need to see that this economic crisis is part of it, and that Washington needs to stimulate the economy to get us out of this crisis.
So, next question would be, how can we get out of this crisis?
Well, for Illinois, the key has to be a tax increase. There's no way to cut your way out of this crisis, I don't think. I mean, it would hurt basic services, basic social services, basic education, basic health care. These are things that are essential to the people of Illinois. So it means that Illinois needs to raise taxes. And there were some proposals in the past that made some sense. Among them was a 2% income tax increase. Illinois has one of the lowest income taxes of any of the states in the U.S. We also have one of the leanest workforces. We have fewer state employees per capita than any other state in the country. So Illinois needs to raise these taxes in order to protect these essential services. One proposal was to do a 2% personal income tax increase with exemptions, so that people making less than $60,000 would actually be paying less taxes, and people over $60,000 would be bearing the brunt of this, with the higher brackets, of course, paying the bigger part of it. And that's a problem that Illinois has, is that we need a more progressive way of raising income. And this tax increase would be the most progressive, but it still could be, there's some constitutional barriers to making it as progressive as some people would like.
Yes.
But that tax increase is just essential to defending a quality of life for the people of Illinois.
So are there people that are going to be, with the budget cuts, are there people that are going to be benefiting from this?
I think in a sense there are. You know, some politicians will tell you lies, as we know from the past. And any of the politicians that are trying to get elected by saying that they can cut their way out of this crisis are lying to you, because it'll mean more crime, it'll be more people suffering, it'll mean more people not getting educated, it'll mean more social suffering at every turn. And if that's their solution, I think that they are benefiting off of the misery of the Illinois people. And you know, we also know that if you look at the crisis nationally, you know, the banks are giving big bonuses again to their executives. You know, some people have come out of this crisis smelling wet, like a rose. And the reality is that we still have, you know, 13 million people unemployed. We have lots of other people worried for their job. If you look around, how many restaurants have closed, how many businesses are boarded up, you know, and so there are a few people who are benefiting from this crisis, but most of us are just plain hurting, and we need to fight back against those budget cuts, because that just deepens the hurt.
Well, the next question I have for you is, what is managed care, and is that going to have even more of an impact on the budget?
Yes, the governor has proposed a Medicaid managed care proposal, and so far it's a pilot or a program in 6 counties, and it would place 40,000 people with disabilities into HMOs, health maintenance organizations. This is where the insurance company gets to decide what health care you get. This is a really bad way to do health care. The decision should be between you and your doctor, right?
Exactly.
And we don't want insurance companies to run our health care. They just are there to make money. They don't know anything about disability. They don't know anything about treating, health care medical needs issues.
Yes.
And so, but the state is using this as a budget cut, really. They have said that they'll save $200 million over 5 years. That means that of the 40,000 people in this program, they would be taking away $1,000 per year per person who is currently, in money that is currently being spent on health care. That's an average, of course. Then the managed care organization gets to keep 12% of the money that the state pays them for overhead, profit, and administration costs.
And all that.
Yeah, that amounts to another approximately $1,400. So you're taking away $2,400 from each person per year in health care. Money that was being spent on health care, and it's now being either savings to the state or money in the pockets of the managed care organizations, and I just don't think that's right.
And what is happening with the governor's plan to implement Medicaid managed care?
Well, they have 5 companies that are bidding on this contract. And we know that there's a lot of insurance companies that are trying to get into this Medicaid managed care because the health reform that was passed this last spring will put some, actually a number of millions of people, of new people into Medicaid in the future. So they all want to get in on this. They all want that cut of that federal money. And even though they provide no benefits to us, they are trying to get our politicians to cut them in on it. And so we see that there's 5 companies bidding. The state is going to limit it to 2 winners. Those 2 winners will share the 40,000 people. And we think that that decision will come down in early September. Then they will be negotiating the contracts with them. So we're worried about what this is going to mean. It probably will mean more difficult access to doctors and specialists. It will mean that it will be more difficult to get durable medical equipment like the wheelchair you use from these insurance companies. We're afraid that they may even try to put the home services program in it, so that instead of all the money now going to the home service worker, the managed care company will be taking their 12% cut out of that as well, meaning less hours of service for people on home services.
Oh my God.
So these are all things that are, likely to happen, and we've been fighting back. We had a protest on August 12th here in Chicago, and another one in Springfield. And we had 80 to 100 people marching through the streets of Chicago saying no to managed care. And we marched by 2 of the insurance companies that are bidding on this process, telling them that we don't want them in our health care. And we ended up with a rally at the Thompson Center where we had 2 legislators talk to us, including Representative Mary Flowers, who's been a champion of health care consumers. So this is a huge fight. We don't feel like we're going to be able to stop it. But if that's the case, we're going to monitor this, and we're going to ask that they evaluate it. And if we think that it's hurting healthcare, we think the state has to stop it.
Well, if this is the way I'm looking at it. If you put the managed care into the home services, you're going to have some schmuck that doesn't have a clue about home services telling somebody that needs the home services that they're either going to be eliminated or their hours cut from the program. Is that basically what's going to happen?
Well, exactly right. There'll be right now the program is consumer controlled, so people can decide who they're going to hire, how many hours of service. Well, the hours, they determine when the person's going to work for them, whether it's morning or middle of the day or night. And if you have an insurance company in there, they're going to try to take over that management function, which means that you've lost control over your service, as well as the hours that they're taking away to pay for the difference in the cost of the service, because it now costs a lot for them to manage it. So it's a disaster on both ends.
We don't have to be in office to realize that if this whole thing is going to happen, it is going to have an impact on the healthcare system. Wake up and realize it.
That's right. Our politicians are too often just in bed with the insurance companies.
Yes.
They, and we're afraid that once they get these contracts, they'll be giving the politicians even more money in order to, extend and expand their penetration. And so they're taking our tax dollars and using them for their profits instead of providing health care.
So what would you suggest the viewers, what do they have to do to get involved with this?
Well, certainly viewers could talk to their representatives and the governor and tell them that they want a tax increase as far as addressing the budget crisis. And as I said, the tax should be on the people who can afford to pay it. Obviously, lower income people should not be the ones that are taxed more. And then on the Medicaid managed care, I would suggest that they call the governor's office and say that they don't like Medicaid managed care because it takes away medical care and gives the money to the insurance companies.
Is there anything you wanted to add to this?
Well, I think that there's going to be some computer links that we can post on the screen that will tell people where they can go to get more information on this. I also wanted to mention something else that's may be of interest to people. On October 2nd, there's going to be a national march in Washington for jobs, and we all know that the jobs situation is at the root of our economy. If you don't create jobs, then the economy will continue to go down. And if people are interested in that jobs march, they could call me at 312-640-2125, and I'll try to get them more information. But that's something that I think is important, that we can start to fight back against this rotten economy that we find ourselves in and demand jobs. We know that during the Great Depression, Franklin Roosevelt created programs that got people employed, and eventually the economy came back. Well, you know, without things like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, we know that this recession, this depression actually we're in, would be even worse. But there needs to be more stimulus, and that's why we're having the jobs demo in Washington, D.C.
One question. What if somebody really wanted to go, but they're on a super fixed income? Is there any funding for people to, you know, for airfare or lodging if they wanted to go to this protest?
We're taking some buses, and we're hoping to subsidize some people.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. Well, I think we've covered everything, and please get involved as if your life depended on it, because it does. Thank you.
You don't need sympathy if you got soul. You don't need sympathy if you got soul. You can hold out your hand, you can sit back, you can go sleep at night with that shame in your hand. Let other people take control, but you don't need sympathy if you've got soul. You don't need sympathy if you've got soul. You don't need sympathy if you've got soul. You can play the games, you can get handouts, you can make them feel good.
Closed captioning made possible by support from the Costa C Foundation.